This is a lecture from Open Tuition. For the free lecture notes that go with this podcast, please visit opentuition.com.
Here is our suggested answer to Part A of DinZee Co. Remember, the question asked for only 6 audit procedures. We've put 12 here. In an exam you wouldn't do that. We've put 12 just for completeness. It's important to note that we have addressed the question as asked. We have identified the procedures and we have given reason for the procedures. If you leave out the second part, you immediately lose half of the marks. Secondly, look at the format. As suggested, we have adopted a table or columnar format where we're matching the procedure and its explanation. Third point, we have used the phrase "I would." This is a question where you have to put yourself in the position of auditor and explain the audit procedures that you'd carry out. Using the phrase "I would" can help you get down to the level of detail required in the answer. Picture yourself in the audit doing the work, and you're more likely to explain properly exactly what you'll be doing and why you're doing it. When it gets to explanations, it can sometimes be helpful to picture yourself explaining to a very junior member of the audit team exactly what they have to do and why they have to do it. If you don't explain something, you can't get a mark for it. I'm picturing this young audit assistant, perhaps their first audit, to whom you have to explain everything, can help you achieve the level of detail required. Most of the points then listed are self-explanatory, but it's worth drawing attention to the following pairs. The first two. We're going from emails to the orders, and then we're going from orders back to the emails. Both are important audit checks. We want to make sure that every email sent by the store manager produces an order, but it's also just as important to make sure that every order was effectively authorized by an email coming from the store manager. It's a two-way tracking that we discussed when we're looking at systems of internal control in the purchases and indeed in the sales system. The second two also form a pair. We're going from orders in the order database to delivery notes, but we're also going from delivery notes back to the orders. Both are important. We want to make sure every order produces a delivery, but it's also important for us to verify that we don't have deliveries being accepted if there wasn't an order. These two also form a pair. We're going from completed deliveries to perpetual inventories, and we're going back from the perpetual inventories to the deliveries. These form a pair. We want to make sure that invoices end up being credited to individual payables accounts, but if something appears in a payables account, it has to be there because there was an invoice for it. Again, the two-way tracking is absolutely important and absolutely normal in carrying out audit procedures. As was said earlier, you're only required to give 6 audit procedures. If you only ask for 6, only give 6. There'll be no extra marks available for giving 12. Part B is relatively straightforward. Audit procedures that the auditor will normally perform prior to attending the client's premises on the day of the inventory count. This is all to do with preparation. It's very important that the stock-taking instructions are reviewed and understood by the auditor. Frequently, auditors get huge amounts of information from looking at last year's audit papers, paying particular regard to whether there have been problems or issues. We have to make sure that the audit client is expecting our audit staff to turn up, and we have to make sure that we have the audit staff arranged and properly instructed before they go to the client. Part C was asking about weaknesses that there may be in the stock-taking instructions. It was asking for the weakness, why it's a weakness, and how we'd rectify it. We probably only need 4 particular weaknesses to be explained here. There are 12 marks. There's probably a mark for the weakness, 1 for the reason, and 1 for the rectification of the weakness. We've given 6 here just for the sake of completeness. Really, we've been able to get 1 weakness for each of the 6 paragraphs given in the question. And that's to be expected. Remember not to skimp any of these columns. Make sure you explain fully why something is a weakness, and make sure you explain fully how you would overcome it. Again, an easy way to lose marks is to identify the weakness and be so pleased that you've managed to identify a weakness that you don't explain why it is a weakness or state how that can be overcome in enough detail. The final part is relatively straightforward. The difference between a test of control, that's to confirm that the stated control has been operating properly through the year, and a substantive procedure, which is really attacking particular figures on the financial statements and saying how can we verify the assertions that they're making. For example, the value, the existence, the occurrence. And then it simply asks us to show 2 examples drawn from the inventory count information that we were supplied with. And that's relatively straightforward. A control is making sure, for example, that all count sheets are accounted for, that the numerical sequence is complete. A substantive test, going for high volume, high value normally, the simple thing to do there is to say, well, we want to make sure that all the calculations subsequent to the stock take are correct, and will include procedures such as adding up the values on the stock sheets.